إن الحمد لله وحده الصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وبعد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم.
One of the fundamental requirements from us is, as I discussed before, the three elements of sabr as described by Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah. The first one is fi'l ta'ah, doing the obedience. Second, ijtinabu anil ma'siyah, staying away from disobedience. And third one, believing in the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you remember, we discussed last time the three types of sabr. One, sabr fi ta'ah, sabr in obedience. Sabr anil ma'siyah, sabr, patience, observing the patience upon staying away from the disobedience. And third, sabr al-bala, observing our patience at the face of hardships. So bearing the hardships patiently. So these are three types of the sabr we discussed last time. All these three types are, if a person wants to achieve it, the best way is Ramadan. The best way is fasting. All these three things are there. As-sabr fi-ta'ah, as-sabr anil ma'siyah, as-sabr al-bala. All three types of sabr. If a person wants to achieve, then one of the best thing is to observe the fasting in the month of Ramadan. How? As we know that in the month of Ramadan, or sawm, or it's not only necessarily the month of Ramadan is obligatory upon the Muslims, but there are optional fasting as well. Optional fasting that every week, Mondays and Thursdays, then 3 days in a month. So then Sawm Ashura. There are many other forms of the optional fasting. As far as the fasting is concerned, Sawm or Siyam is a root word, Sawm or Siyam. It means abstinence, staying away from. Arabs use this word for the horse whose mouth was tied, so that he will not just develop the craving for the food. When mouth was tied, this would say, Farasun sa'imun, that this horse, his mouth has been tied, his mouth has been bound, so that he will not go, he will not see here and there. So, and means he abstained from eating the food, he abstained from going here and there. The sawm is abstinence. Sawm means refraining. It means staying away from three things. Technical meaning of fasting is al-ijtinabu anil akli wa shurbi wal jima' min tulu' al-fajr ila ghurub al-shams. As-sawmu ijtinabu anil akl. What is fasting? It is abstinence from eating. Washurb, and drinking. Wal jima, and getting closer to the spouse. So these are the three things that a person is required to stay away from. But when we see practically and fundamentally, all these three things are halal. They are permissible for a person. Eating halal is permissible. Drinking the halal is permissible. And getting close to the spouse is also a form of charity, as Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is one of the form of the ibadah. But what do we do in fasting? What we do in the month of Ramadan, or while observing the optional fasting, that we stay away from this, we stay away from the halal. Actually, when our nafs is prone to observe the haram things, when our nafs is too much inclined towards the unlawful things, to get the control back over the nafs is very difficult. And usually nafs is out of control. When it gets out of control, and that leads the nafs to get closer to the haram and forbidden things. The rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of fasting is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trains our nafs to stay away from the halal, not haram. Haram is already that has to be stayed away from, that has to be refrained from. We need to observe our abstinence from the haram. But what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands, that this ibadah has been framed and designed in such a way, Allah doesn't say that during this month you don't have to commit any haram thing. No, because nafs is already prone to it, is already accustomed to do something unlawful. Now how to get back, how to get the control upon the nafs back? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just setting us some more things. That is, that you are supposed to abstain from the halal things. What? Eating food, it is halal. Eating drink, it is halal. Getting close to the spouse, it is halal. But during the fasting, a person is required to stay away from. That's what we call as sawm. How and why? Because when we do this, when we have this capability, a person is hungry. He's quite hungry. Nobody is around in the room. And the delicious food is in front of him. And what stops him not to consume the food? It's consciousness of Allah, that I cannot do this. Allah has forbidden me. Allah has stopped me. Allah has refrained me to go near to the food. Though there's no anyone. And this feeling, it gives a new strength to the iman. That you have everything before you. A person is immensely thirsty. It is a scorching heat outside. And he's quite thirsty when he gets inside the room and there is a cold water in front of him. But he doesn't take one single sip. Why? Because he has the feeling that Allah is watching over me. Allah has forbidden me. So this is the halal thing. The person is staying away from the halal. Once a person develops this strength of iman, that you have the control upon the nafs, that you stay away from the halal, it is deadly impossible that a person gets close to the haram. So here the sabr is tested. Here comes the sabr. Here comes the patience. That's why fasting and sabr, they are interrelated. Not only the fasting, even all other ahkam of Islam, they are connected to the sabr. If a person lacks the sabr, it's very difficult for a person to practice the good. That's why the first kind of sabr is as-sabr fi ta'ah. While observing the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person is required to observe the patience. He's supposed to show the patience. Food is before you, drink is before him, and he's not taking anything. So he controls his nafs, teaching the nafs to observe the patience. Forcing the nafs, compelling the nafs to observe the patience. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala trains our nafs. And when we do this for the long month, and by the end of the month, a person is able to have the control back upon the nafs. Before, it was difficult for him to get away from the forbidden things, from the prohibited things. Now, by the source of staying away from the lawful things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon him this strength, this power, that he doesn't go near to the unlawful things. So that's a sabr. So sabr is, we can say, one of the important elements. And if there is no sabr, all the problems arise in absence of the sabr. All the problems, they arise in absence of the sabr. In presence of the sabr, all the hardships are resolved in a best and beautiful manner. Many a great issues can be resolved through the sabr. Many a small things can turn into the bigger issues in absence of the sabr. So sabr is a fabric of life, is a beauty of life. And those who are blessed with this, as we discussed before, the fruits of the sabr, one of the important things they get, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allaha ma'as sabiri. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who observe the patience. So they get the nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the most precious thing a person gets in dunya. And that's the most precious thing a person gets in the akhirah. That is nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, Inna Allaha ma'as sabiri. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with those who observe the patience. So when a person observes the sabr, he gets a closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Another important thing which help us to achieve the sabr is remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is dhikr of Allah. Dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps a person to achieve the sabr. How it helps us to achieve the sabr and to develop more and more patience in us, we'll discuss it inshallah, and other important aspects of sabr, we'll discuss it inshallah after a short break. Before this, if any person has any question, you can ask please. So 3 types of patience, actually there's a question, 3 types of patience, as I said, patience in obedience of Allah, patience in staying away from the forbidden things, and the as-sabr al-bala, patience at the face of the hardships. These are the 3 types of patience. So we are discussing about the different steps, how to achieve the sabr that will help us to achieve the patience, either observing the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or staying away from the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or facing the hardships. So another important element is that is a dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That also helps us because the dhikr, it boosts the sabr. It strengthens the sabr. If we constantly and regularly remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what will happen? That He's a master of all, He's a master of our destiny. He's our creator. And as we know that He's a creator of good and bad, He's a khaliqul khayri wa shar. So when difficulties arise and we gain the consolation while remembering Him, we know that these hardships, these problems or these tests, they directly come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if at that moment we remember Him, there are two instant benefits of this thing. One is that a person's position in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is getting higher and higher. And second thing is that he will find a consolation in the heart, which is important for the patience, for the sabr. If there is no any consolation of the heart, then there will be discomfort in the heart. If there is discomfort in the heart, that will adversely affect the patience. So dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps a person a lot. Zikr is, we should say, it's a therapy. It's an emotional therapy, it's a psychological therapy, is a therapy which helps a person to get rid of a number of diseases. And when a person remembers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he also realizes that Allah is my protector. Allah is the one who is my benefactor, who is my protector. So a person puts all his trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very important for patience. So patience and trust in Allah, they are interconnected. As we discuss a relationship of sabr with the amal and a relationship of sabr with the fasting and relationship of sabr with the trust, with the tawakkul of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are interconnected. And when a person has this feeling, and a person has this belief that, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-An'am, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflicts any hardship upon you, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ. If you face any sort of hardship, وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ, if any affliction hits you, فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ. There is no one who can remove this hardship, this affliction from you, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And a person is having firm belief upon, and the Quran is dhikr. One of the name of Quran is also al-dhikr, means the remembrance, which constantly reminds a person of the belief he must have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one of the belief is that وَإِن يَمْسَسْكَ اللَّهُ بِضُرٍّ, Allah says to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if you face any affliction, if you face any hardship, if you face any sorrow, pain or distressful situation, فَلَا كَاشِفَ لَهُ إِلَّا هُ. There is no one who can avert this, who can avoid this, who can take it away from you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So dhikr will help a person a lot. In a distressful situation, dhikr is the best therapy. And when a person is mindful of Him, he's mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is aware of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's might and power, And then he also knows that when he observes this, Inna Allah ma'as sabir, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient. Does this mean that when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient, does it mean that he is not with the impatient? Inna Allah ma'as sabir, indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the patient. But does it mean that he is not with those who are impatient? Allah says, Inna Allah ma'as sabir, indeed Allah is with those who are patient. So does it mean its opposite meaning is that those who don't remember him, those who don't, those who are not patient, who don't observe the patience, Allah is not with them? Apparently the opposite meaning suggests it. Allah is with those who are patient. What's its opposite meaning? It is not with those who are not patient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with everyone. Allah is with everyone, but is the person who is away from Allah. One is that Allah is a person himself who is away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not Allah. Allah is always there. Ujibu da'wata da'i idha da'an. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that I'm always here to listen. Ujibu da'wata da'. I answer to the supplication whenever he supplicates. Qul inni qareeb. You say I'm close to you. And that closeness has also been described in the Quran. Nahnu aqrabu ilayhi min hablil warid. We are closer to a person than his jugular vein. So it means Allah is always with He is with us. But it is a person himself who is away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the unfortunate person that Allah is close, but he is getting away. And what takes him away? The impatience. So what connects a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is patience. And what takes him away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is impatience of a person. So when a person makes a dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so our remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes the shaitan not have the control upon us. As I said in the beginning of our session, that there are always two forces who are always at a constant battle with each other in the heart. Forces of good and forces of evil. When a person makes a lot of dhikr, it strengthens the forces of good. And they conquer the heart. They capture the heart. And their dominance upon the heart is important to observe the patience. On the other hand, when a person does not make the dhikr, what happens? The forces of evil take control of the heart. Shaitan gets the strength. And shaitan, then a person becomes, we can say, his remote control is in the hands of shaitan. However, shaitan wants to move him, the person is doing accordingly. So dhikr is a thing which is a protection to the heart, with a protection to the whisperings of the shaitan, with a protection to all the plots and the plannings of the shaitan. When a person is making the dhikr, so his heart is protected. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him with the strength, with the energy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses him with the God consciousness, with the gnosis and the marif of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which are immensely important. So we can say that the sabr and the dhikr are active states. Sabr and the dhikr, they are active states. Active states means that make a person conscious. A person is not negligent. Negligent heart is a devil's workshop. Negligent heart is devil's workshop. When the heart is negligent, when the heart is not conscious, then shaitan takes the control of the heart. And then it develops so many negative things. So we need to put ourselves in dhikr, and when we put ourselves in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that will help us to develop the sabr, to protect our sabr or to strengthen our sabr. And the seventh thing which is important in order to achieve the sabr is that we need to control our emotional responses. as unlike the other beings, we are emotional beings also. We are the rational beings, we are the social beings. At the same breath, we are also emotional beings. We are not like the ordinary machines, which lack the emotional response. If you say anything to the dead matter, dead substances, whatever substance it is, the buildings, the gadgets, the electronic things, anything, they're not having the emotions, isn't it? So they don't show the response. But as far as the human beings are concerned, we are emotional beings. We show our response very instantly. Once our emotions are hit, so we instantly and promptly we show a response. And that showing of response many a times makes a person regretful. Because when a person is overwhelmed by his emotions, at that time, the rational capabilities are subdued. They are subjugated. We have two propensities. One, rational propensity and emotional propensity. Reason always makes a person to take the right decisions. Think and then take a decision. On the other hand, emotion, they are we can say the wild forces. A person is deprived of the thinking capability. That's why when a person is having the strong emotions, when there's outburst of the emotions, at that very moment, a person doesn't know what he's speaking. A person doesn't know what he's doing because his mental capability, his rational capability, or his rational propensity is subdued or it is neutralized, we can say. He cannot take the right decisions. But at the same time, we cannot give up the emotions because that's a part of our nature. There's a part of the human nature. We are emotional beings. But one thing is there, Islam teaches us to control our emotions. And those who are highly emotional, it's very difficult for them to observe the patience. If a person is not having the control upon the emotions, it's very difficult for such people to observe the patience. So controlling the emotions and the observance of patience, they are interconnected things. So we are emotional beings. As I said, that's when once our emotions are hit, they are hit, so we feel at the time of emotional breakdown, you can expect anything from a person. But they are the man of, we can say the man of courage, the man of sabr, the man of patience. Whatever situations they face in their life, they never lose control upon the emotions. That's why they are the great men in the history. So great men are only when they have the control upon the emotions. So sabr is about control of our emotions, isn't it? What's sabr? It is controlling our emotions, regulating our emotions. Is a regulation of emotions and saying and doing the right thing in the right manner rather than being controlled by our emotions. So we need to control our emotions, not the other way around, that we will be controlled by our emotions. The remote control of emotions must be under our hand, must be within us, not the other way around, that we should be controlled by our emotions. Those people who are controlled by the emotions, they make a lot of mistakes in life and then later on they are regretful. True. Yes. True.
So in the end, it's about taking care of your heart, right?
True, very true. Yeah. Actually, we can say the seat of emotion is the heart. Seat of emotion, or the source, we can say the domicile of emotion, it is the heart. That's why in Islam, a lot of things have been discussed about the heart. And one of the hadiths, which is very important to understand this aspect, is that which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Ala wa inna fil jasadi mudghah." Listen, there's a flesh of meat. There's a piece of meat in the human body. Why? Ala wa inna fil jasadi mudghah. In salahat salahal jasadu kullu. If it is set right, the whole body is set right. When fasadat, fasad al-jasadu, if it is corrupted, the whole body is corrupted. So we can say the seat of emotions is also the heart. I always say heart is not having only physiological importance, that it's like the pumping organ. It's a chief organ, and spiritually, it is also a chief organ. But everything lies there. And how to control our emotions? The best tool or the best characteristic, best property to control the emotion is taqwa, is a God consciousness, fearing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the best thing that will help us to control our emotions. And where is taqwa? Again, there is another hadith in which Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, while showing towards his blessed heart, he said, "At-taqwa ha huna, at-taqwa ha huna, at-taqwa ha huna." Taqwa lies herein, taqwa lies herein, taqwa lies in the heart. So by the end of the day, what's taken care of? That's our heart. If heart is out of control, everything is out of control. If heart is under the control, everything is under the control. It's because of this thing I discussed that there are two forces always who try to capture the heart, forces of good and forces of evil. Once the forces of evil, they are triumphant and they capture the heart, then it gives rise to the positive feelings all the time. Even if at the face of so many hardships, a person will feel, he will never feel depressed. He will never feel dejected. He will always feel positive. He will feel that, because by the end of the day, he knows that Allah is with me. When Allah is with me, everything is with me. There will be no breakdown of the emotions. But many times what happens that when we are away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I said, Allah is never away from us. He says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. A group of people came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asking whether we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loudly or secretly, quietly. If he's away, then we supplicate to him loudly. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send down these verses. When my servant asks concerning me, when my servant asks about me, قُلْ إِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. Tell them I'm always around you. But how it is best known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is around us. He's qareeb to us, he's near to us. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I answer the supplication the moment he makes the supplications. So Allah is close to us, and this closeness can be felt only by the heart. When heart is sound, we have discussed last time the kinds of the heart. As Imam Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentions, there are three types of hearts. One, the sound heart, the healthy heart, al-qalb al-salim, the healthy heart. And second, the sick heart, al-qalb al-marid, or al-qalb al-saqim. And the third one, the dead heart. The dead heart is a third kind of the heart. So when a person is having the dead heart, so he's always controlled by the emotions. He will never have the control upon the emotions. As far as the sick heart is concerned, sometimes when his iman is stronger, he takes the control of the emotions. When iman is weaker, so emotions take control of him. He's in a vacillating position. He's in oscillation all the time. Oscillating between sometimes having the control upon the emotions and sometimes emotions control him. However, in order to observe the patience, it's immensely important for a person that he must control his emotions. And as we know that Sabr is not just a passive endurance of hardships, that we face the hardships and then there's no way but to just face it. There's a passive approach. Passive approach is that a person is struck with or he's hit with any hardship, then he says that there is no way find out except to bear it. One is bearing the hardship, and second is enduring the hardship. Bearing the hardship is just he's bearing this because there's no way escape, there's no way out. But enduring is that he's having certain values with him, certain ideas with him that supports him to endure this hardship. And And this helps a person taking our complaints to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it makes us to accept the destiny and the rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a passive force. Sabr is an active force which actively takes a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and is a bridge which connects the servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which takes a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I always say that these are the two wings with the believer. Two wings which help him to take the flight to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One is sabr and second is shukr. Sabr and shukr are the two sets of wings which take a person to the heights of the success. So it's not a negative force. It's not a negative thing. Rather, it's an active force which connects a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And at the same time, seeking the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to improve the situation. However, when we lose the patience, when we lose the sabr, what we do? We give full control to the shaitan. When we lose the patience, we give full control of our heart, of our thinking to the shaitan. And shaitan is playing with the person who is not having the sabr. That's why you find him, and sometimes, Allah forbid, the person commits the words of kufr and disbelief. Because now the full control is under the hands of shaitan. A person may commit many bad deeds, and sometimes he reaches to the heights of the bad deeds that he commits the words of the kufr. And there are many people that even they say against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the level of the impatience takes them to the kufr. It's why? Because when there's emotional breakdown, they don't have the control upon them. They surrender before the shaitan and they give full control of themselves to the shaitan. And shaitan is playing with them. And the main objective of shaitan is to get us out of the fold of Islam. 7 into 24, his main objective is ultimately to get a person out of the fold of Islam. For this, he exerts all his efforts. And a person is giving easily this chance to shaitan once he is impatient. That's why sabr has been encouraged in Islam. As I discussed last time, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal says, rahimahullah, there are 90 over occasions in the Quran where Allah mentions the sabr, different dimensions of sabr, different forms of sabr, different ways of sabr, different situations of sabr. Because this is a thing, is a fabric of life. As I said, it's the beauty of the believer is sabr. And is a thing which connects him, which gets him more and more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if a person is not having this thing, then a person has to be regretful. And once a person loses his control upon his nafs, then he gives the bridle of his nafs into the hands of the shaitan. And second important thing regarding the sabr, we need to understand, sabr is not a suffering. Sabr is not a suffering. Suffering apparently seems to be the same thing. A person is suffering through a hardship, is bearing the sufferings, and the sabr, he has to observe the sabr. Sabr is different than the suffering. Suffering is that a person, when he doesn't find any way out, and he faces hardship, and there is neither any psychological support to him, nor emotional support to him, nor rational support to him. And he's broken down before it, which takes him, or which makes a person and shows him the way towards escapism. You know, the Buddhist philosophy, when we discussed this sabr, the Buddhist concept is based on that. They say that the presence of evil, why the hardships are here. They say the life is full of sufferings. The best way to deal with the suffering is to escape. Is their concept. Buddhism is based on this notion that the life is full of sufferings. So they don't take life is full of tests. So what they lack, the basic fundamental ideology, which help a person to face these hardships with a smiling face. And that will help him to achieve more and more heights in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the negative aspect is that's why there is inherent pessimism in Buddhist philosophy. This inherent pessimism, despondency, disappointment. There's inherent disappointment in this concept of in this ideology. So they see life is full of sufferings. So best way is to just accept the defeat and just leave the field. And then Shaitan has to do his job, taking them away from the field of life and showing them the way towards the jungles and the forests, doing the meditations there. So that's not the life. We are social beings. We need the society. We need the family. We need the social settings. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created our human nature. The settings of the human nature are based on the society. So we are social beings. Contrary to Aristotle, we are not social animals. We are social beings. We said man is social animal. We say no, man is social being. We need the society. We need the family. We need the others. We need the friends. We need the people around us. So Sabr is not a suffering. Rather, Sabr is a way, is a methodology, is an approach how to face the sufferings of the life and to turn these sufferings as a means of success, to change these sufferings into the success. So Sabr, S, it helps us to change the suffering S into the success that is S. So it is S3 concept. So Sabr helps us to change the sufferings into the success. It's not a passive force, it's an active force. So this is very important to understand. And we know that once those who face these sufferings with this intention, with this pretext that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made them to test me. And a person is now remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doesn't give any control to the shaitan, having the full control upon the emotions. This way, a person gets the heights of the success in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the question here arises, how long a person is supposed to bear the hardships? How long a person is supposed to bear the sabr? Or simply we can say, what should be the stamina of the sabr? Sabr stamina. Actually, there's a verse in the Quran. Prophet Sallallahu used to recite this verse. And there's the last verse of Surah Al-Imran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu isbiru wa sabiru wa rabitu. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu isbiru. For those who believe, be patient. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu isbiru wa sabiru. And have patience. Be patient and have patience. And this patience is, and as I said, that as long as there's this life, there are the tests. And these tests take two forms, sometimes in the form of joy and sometimes in the form of sorrow. Sometimes in the form of happiness and sometimes in the form of anguish and the distressful situations. But what is required from a person is to have the faith that these things are from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Am hasibtum an tadkhulul jannata. Do you guess that you will enter that paradise without passing through the way those before you passing through, they were rattled by hardships. Allah says in the Quran, they were rattled by the hardships, poverty, adversity, till much an extent that even the messenger and those with him cried out, Mata Nasrullah. When is the help of Allah arriving? So that was the level. So it means life is full of tests. And once we know a proper methodology, we have the firm foundation of Iman and faith, then all these hardships, these sufferings are turned into the forms of success. The only thing it needs that how we approach these hardships, how we approach these sufferings. So that's the only thing. And Sabr is a weapon against these sufferings, is a weapon against the negative feelings, is a weapon against the despondency and disappointment. What is Sabr? It teaches us, keep going on. Do not give up. Sabr tells us. And keep enduring, knowing that being strong is the only option with us. When Prophet ﷺ, he came from Battle of Khandaq, if I'm not mistaken. They were quite tired, exhausted. And they were not just even not having that rest. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded, we just move towards the Banu Qurayza. In that exhausted situation, they went, knowing that life is all about being stronger upon the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sabr is to think of Allah well all the time. That is sabr. That's how it joins the relationship of a person with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabr is a means to get more and more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabr is a means to feel the sweetness of the iman and faith. Sabr is a tool to get closeness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sabr is to try to ignore those negative suggestions from devil and shaitan, that nothing will ever help. Our shaitan is always saying, he makes us pessimist, he makes us disappointed. So there's no way, there's no chance. No, sabr tells us, no, don't lose your hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keep your hope stronger and live with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that gives a new, and it infuses a new life in the believer's life. And shaitan comes to our mind, okay, you lost a job, now you will never get it. Well, you see, there's economic depression is there. There's financial constraints are there. These are all the whisperings of shaitan. All the whisperings of shaitan. But as I said in the beginning, when we study the stories of, when we read the stories of Anbiya alayhim salatu wa taslim, what we find there is full optimism. There's no pessimism. Having the full hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if all the current available situation means suggest that you cannot achieve this thing. All the available means suggest you cannot achieve this. But they knew that Allah, by the end of the day, Allah is the creator of the things. And it is He, whenever He wishes anything to happen, He doesn't need anything. He's not dependent on anything. So their faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped him to develop the optimism in Allah that infused a new life in them, a new joy, a new bliss in their lives. What we lack? That firstly, we don't know them. We know them just by names. We never try to just peep through their lives to find the essence of the true life, essence of a happy life, essence of an obedient life. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to protect our heart from all sorts of negative feelings. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to test us to the extent that we may give up. So this is very important. We should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We should not ask Allah, Ya Allah, you test me and I will show my resilience. I will show my obedience to you. Sahnun rahimahullah is one of the very famous student of Imam Malik rahimahullah. Sahnun, Imam Sahnun. And Imam Sahnun rahimahullah, it's mentioned about him that he's the one who compiled Al-Mudammanatul Kubra. It's one of the, you can say, fundamental book in Maliki fiqh, in which almost 36,000 issues has been discussed. He was a great faqih, great scholar. But at the same time, immensely pious person. It's mentioned about Imam Sahnun rahimahullah. One day, he said to Allah, Ya Allah, I'm your faithful servant. You test me the way you wish. I will prove my obedience to you. And it is mentioned that Allah calls it a simple test to him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped him, that he could not pass the urine. And then his belly was swollen. He cried before Allah, Ya Allah, I cannot bear any sort of test. I seek your forgiveness. I ask you to save me from all sorts of tests. So what should we do? All the time making dua, Ya Allah, don't test us. To the extent that we give up. To the extent that that the shaitan will control us. Ya Allah, don't test us to the extent that we are disappointed from your mercy. Rather, we should always ask the ease from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we must also observe the optional ibadah, like salah, a long prayer that will help us to observe the patience upon the ta'ah, upon the obedience of fasting, regularly fasting, and then giving away in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala charity, and practicing the sabr on daily basis. Just in 24 hours, just doing a small action, small deed, which our nafs doesn't want to do. Any good deed which nafs doesn't want to do. For example, sometimes in the family, so you have, because we know that many a times the terms are not good. Nafs says don't talk. Now force the nafs to talk everyone. That will help us to control our nafs, to control our emotions, inshallah, and making a lot of dua. Ya Allah, you save us, you protect us, and grant the ease, every possible ease to us. Amin ya Rabbal Alameen. So subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.